Wait till Vader and wait till Ric Flair see my ultimate surprise. I become the man possessed with taking you out of this sport forever.
This man, 11 times world champion, is out here in a dress with makeup on, nail polish, a wig and everything. Why? Because of that man right there, Hulk Hogan. He has driven Ric Flair to this.
My plan is to put the WCW in a spin and reinstate the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Hello, my name is Bob Bamber and welcome to the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast. We're going back in the time machine to March of 1995 for Volume 1 of this month's show. Volume 2, which we've done a bit of and we're going to record a bit of in a bit, we'll be looking at the WWF, including the build-up to WrestleMania, which is happening in a few days' time, and also all of your ECW action, which me and Del taped last week, I think. But we're here to discuss WCW in Volume 1, including Uncensored. I'm being joined firstly by Stewart Brookes. Stewart, hello.
Hello, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. And Wayne, let's go.
Hey, Bob. You all right?
I'm doing well. Stewart, kick us off with the news.
Dustin Rhodes, the Blacktop Bully, and road agent Mike Graham were all fired by WCW this month for breaching company policy over the use of blood. At WCW Uncensored, the pair competed in a King of the Road match on the back of a moving truck, which was taped a few days prior to the show, even though it aired live. Both men bladed at the instruction of Graham, who is even said to have brought the blades along with him. We will have more on this story later in the show.
The departures came with the backdrop of significant financial cutbacks within the company, who were ordered to cut $500,000 off their annual wage bill. On top of the departures of Rhodes, Bullitt and Graham, the company have also cut Harley Race, who is currently recovering from a serious car accident, and unsurprisingly, Paul Roma. Roma, who we discussed at length at last month's show, was axed just after days of WCW Super Brawl for going into business for himself against Alex Wright. He did jobs on WCW TV throughout March.
WCW hosted Uncensored this month, an extraordinary pay-per-view in more ways than one. Firstly, Ric Flair, who had already been seen earlier in the evening dressed in drag, would play a key role in the main event. It would be Flair, not Hogan's actual opponent Vader, who Hogan dragged to all four corners of the ring to retain his WCW World title. Elsewhere on the show, the Blacktop Bully won a King of the Road match, Johnny B. Bad won the Battle of Boxer versus Wrestler, and Meng won a martial arts contest with Jim Duggan.
Another talking point coming out of the pay-per-view was the debut of the Renegade. Hogan had been building for weeks on television about the ultimate surprise, and it debuted in the form of a knockoff Ultimate Warrior gimmick at this show. Renegade was dressed like Warrior, had uncannily similar music, and even wore face paint. He would be used in the main event as an equaliser for the presence of Flair.
While the Hogan feud with Flair would be playing out on television, it was off-screen where things really came to a head this month, with reports of a shouting match between the pair. Flair, who still remains head booker in name, has no control of Hogan's booking nor his schedule. Flair and others were frustrated that Hogan didn't appear for the final set of TV tapings prior to Uncensored. It's seen also that the finish in the main event came down to Flair having no other option, with Hogan refusing to budge for Vader and Vader refusing to budge for Hogan.
Going forward, WCW's May pay-per-view looks set to be headlined by Vader and the returning Ric Flair against Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. Since Uncensored, both Hogan and Savage have requested the in-ring return of Flair. In June, the currently slated main event is Sting, Randy Savage and the Road Warriors against the new Four Horsemen with Flair, Arn Anderson, Vader and Steve Austin.
Well, wait a second now. What are they trying to... What are they... Oh, I'm getting out of here. I'll see you later. It's all yours. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have just seen the big man Vader in action, and he is accompanied by the Nature Boy Ric Flair. What does this mean right here?
Listen to me, Hogan! Vader waits for no man! This is your responsibility! Take a look, Hogan! Take a look! That's your responsibility! Vader is the United States Heavyweight Champion! Vader is, after Super Brawl, the uncrowned Heavyweight Champion of the world! saw Vader whip your hind end from one corner to the other. And then, when it was all said and done, it was Vader that had you on your back for not a 3 count, not a 10 count, but a 20 count. Mean Gene, you tell the world who the uncrowned heavyweight world champion is. That's Vader, brother. And an uncensored Hogan. There will be nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Brother, where are you? We're standing right here. Where's Hogan?
Ric Flair.
What Hogan has done is he's paid Bockwinkel to take him off the program. You have spared yourself one more week. Hogan and Uncensored. There's no rules. There's no WCW. There's no Bockwinkel. There's no law. There's no order. For you, it is the end of Hulkamania!
We begin with WCW Saturday Night on the 4th of March. This week's show was curtailed to an hour due to a James Bond movie airing. Colonel Robert Parker debuted Meng as an in-ring performer. Meng laid out jobber Steve Neely with a savate kick and won in less than 10 seconds. During a squash match, Lord Steven Regal apologised for beating up peasants. He strikes his opponent again and says into the camera, "I just can't help it." In a post-match promo, Regal says he's looking to enter the tag division but needs a partner. Bobby Eaton approaches him, but Regal was less than impressed. In the main event, Vader faced off against the Patriot. Without explanation, Hulk Hogan ran out and attacked Vader with a strap, forcing the DQ. Hogan strangled Vader with a strap, while Jimmy Hart held off Ric Flair. The Nasty Boys and Jim Duggan ran out to pull Hogan off of Vader. The commentator said Hogan had snapped. More ominous still for Hogan, Vader got straight back up. On to the main event on the 5th, we start by seeing the Harlem Heat vs Stars and Stripes tag title match from WCW Worldwide. Shockingly, the match ended when Sister Sherry sprayed hairspray into Patriot's eyes. They're telling a story that Diamond Dallas Page has fallen on hard times. He's now wearing cheap sunglasses and has lost his jewellery. He's driving up a banged old Cadillac with flames on the side and has pawned his jewellery. He's even seen trying to sell his autograph for $15 at a blood bank. Eric Bischoff alluded to the MMA promotion Ultimate Fighting Championship on commentary, quoting Sting saying, "You can refer to Ultimate this and Ultimate that, but WCW is where the real competition is at." Paul Roma started his final month in WCW by eating the pin in a tag match with Paul Orndorff against Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. On to WCW Saturday Night on March 11th, Commissioner Nick Bockwinkel opens up announcing that until WCW Uncensored, Hulk Hogan won't be allowed to be on the premises of any WCW TV show. In actuality, Hogan just wouldn't work the tapings, so they had to write him off. He pre-taped promos to air on all of the shows prior to Uncensored. While it probably means nothing, perhaps as a message towards Paul Roma, Randy Savage won a squash match with 2 top rope elbow drops. Savage still has nothing on Roma in this regard. Hulk Hogan's promised an ultimate surprise at WCW Uncensored. Lord Steven Regal was again confronted by Bobby Eaton. Eaton challenged Regal to a match, in which Regal told him to bring his grotty wrestling gear next week. Dave Sullivan is in the crowd for this edition of the show. The main event is Das Wunderkind Alles Right versus Arn Anderson for the WCW TV title. A surprisingly decent match between the pair, which not surprisingly ended by countout. The referee's back was turned and Johnny B. Bad ran out in boxing gloves and laid out Anderson. Wright wins by countout. Vader wins a squash match. He pummels a jobber and drags him over to the interview area. He says the jobber is Hogan's responsibility. On to WCW main event on March 12th, and we start by seeing Arn Anderson against Jim Duggan. After the match, Meng ran out and Duggan nailed him over the head with his 2x4. Meng just stood there and no-sold the move. On to WCW Saturday Night on the 18th of March, Johnny B. Bad had his boxing trainer Rock Finnegan with him during a promo. Hulk Hogan cuts another promo on Vader, during which the Ultimate Surprise lets out a couple of loud howls off camera. Hogan tells Jimmy Hart to keep him in his cage. Lord Steven Regal faces Bobby Eaton. Bobby dominates the match, and halfway through, Regal scarpers to the interview area and claims Eaton would make a wonderful tag team partner. The pair shake hands. Vader wins a squash match. Dave Sullivan, who sat in the crowd, comes to ringside to remonstrate with Vader and Flair about beating up the jobber. For his troubles, Flair attacks Sullivan, then Vader hits 2 Vader bombs. Nick Bockwinkel and, of all people, Bobby Heenan come to Sullivan's aid. Bockwinkel ejects Vader and Flair from the building. Afterwards, Heenan said he didn't get in the ring to help Dave Sullivan. He said he stepped into the ring to stop Flair from going over the edge. In the main event, Dustin Rhodes and John V. Bad defeated Pretty Wonderful. Flair and Vader come out and then interrupt the wrap-up. Bockwinkel comes out and tells Vader to bring his attorney and his checkbook next week. Flair says he doesn't want to stay in WCW, but Flair says tomorrow is unsanctioned. Anything can happen.
Recently, our colleague, Eric Bischoff, had an opportunity to talk to DDP.
Diamond Dallas, to you.
Yeah, Diamond Dallas.
Exposed
Let's take
what?
a look at Up Close and Personal with Diamond Dallas.
The last couple of years as a guy that's just rolling in buck. By the way, can I take a look at those glasses? Real quick.
My Oakleys.
Yeah, just real quick.
$287. Don't
yeah,
be smudging the lens.
I was just curious. Yeah, what I thought. $287 a case, perhaps. These are phonies.
They are not.
Phony. $3 bill.
Did he change
phony.
the glasses? These aren't the glasses I just gave you.
And by the way, where's jewelry? All the diamond stuff that you guys are usually wearing around. Where is it all?
We got stolen. So I just put it in.
Robbery.
Yeah, exactly.
A robbery. Were you there?
Well, no, but Dallas told me that we were robbed.
We got robbed.
You got nothing. What we got is videotape. Last couple of days following you around, you've heard of Candid Camera, right? WCW has its own version. In fact, let's quit talking about it. Let's roll the tape. I'd like you to respond to a couple of the things that we saw over the last... This is only over the last 3 or 4 days. Is that you, Diamond Dallas? Is that the Mercedes?
Of course it's me.
Okay.
That's my car.
Nice Mercedes.
Yep.
What about the car next to it? The one you're getting in. The one you're starting up. And the one you're driving off in.
That's right. Let me regurgitate this for a second here.
Regurgitate it?
Whatever. That was the loaner. The guy who works on my car. He loaned me that car.
Yeah.
And my Benz is in the shop. Isn't that right, Max? See,
nice set of wheels there.
We were just out joyriding, Hey, man, it's a fun thing to drive around,
Who did the paint job?
I don't know. It's on my car.
Registered your name. And what about this? This is a pawn shop outside of the city limits. And I don't know. That kind of looks like you. And
that looks
kind of looks like you.
Like me.
And it kind of looked like the necklace you used to wear.
That look at the guy. That long brown hair looks something like me.
Max, you were there. What? You
Max,
anything
who
to
was
say?
That guy? I don't know. I don't know anything about this.
Well, Max obviously liked what he saw. Anyway.
Well, who wouldn't? He's a man mountain, but that's
this wasn't you. This wasn't Diamond Dallas.
That wasn't Max either. It's a guy who looks like Max.
Tattoos, hat, and no wig. And, of course, your car. Notice that you're parked at a handicap spot.
Oh my God,
by the way, we
man.
checked with the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the ticket you got for parking in that spot is under your name. Not that probably means anything.
I did not. I don't know. This is an optical illusion.
No, this
here.
is a blood bank.
This is trick photography.
No, this is a blood bank. And this is Diamond Dallas. Now, this is where most people go out of the kindness of their heart to donate blood. Others go for money.
Sign the book. Everybody wants Diamond D's autograph.
Diamond D?
The money.
An imposter, I assume.
$15. Gotta be.
Well, that's all anyone ever gets.
For my blood? For this blood?
You get a free cookie.
Free cookie. I love chocolate.
I don't know.
Mr. Woodbank.
Diamond Dallas.
Come on, way, monkey boy.
I hope you enjoyed the cookies.
This is bull. This is not me.
This is you.
This is not me. I'm out of here. Get out of my way, monkey boy.
Monkey boy? Diamond Dallas Page, the Diamond Doll, Max Muscle, without their jewelry. Are they what they appear to be? As Diamond Dallas Page would say, I don't think so.
And thank you to Colin for that. We come back in not for WCW Uncensored, at least not yet anyway. First, we're going to start with looking at really the Flair and Vader build to this pay-per-view. As we touched on in the news, and as we're going to touch on later on the show, Hulk Hogan, for reasons, wasn't involved in either of the last 2 weeks of tapings. He was present on the show through the form of video packages, but he wasn't actually at the studio taping any of the in-ring action or any of the storylines. So much of the build for the Hogan and Vader match centered around Vader and particularly Ric Flair. Flair basically going insane, and Vader, well, just being Vader. Stewart, what do you think of these programs and these kind of the build to this?
I mean, I think if they're keeping Ric Flair out of a wrestling role, it's absolutely a fine use of him, especially with the departure of Harley Race, moving Flair into that role. I mean, we all know he's going to end up back in the ring eventually anyway, but to use him in that way for now, it's perfectly fine, and he's good at it.
Wayne?
Yeah, no, totally agree. I mean, obviously what Stewart touched on there, one of the things I wanted to raise was, would Flair actually be involved in this at all if Harley Race wouldn't have been involved in that crash?
It's interesting. I mean, we come back to the Clash of the Champions in January, and they advertised Flair with a view to doing something at the Clash of the Champions, and then he turned up, appeared on screen, and then did absolutely nothing. The theory being, and it does make sense with what's followed, was that Flair would have had some interaction with Harley Race, and obviously Harley Race wasn't there. So, yeah, the answer in short is I don't know, but I get the sense we can infer that I think Flair would have been involved anyway, but I get the sense he would have been involved in Harley Race, and perhaps it would have been a case of Race would have been paired with somebody else. I don't get the sense that would have been a program. But still, what do you think of this side of Flair? Because he left in... Because I remember you were on the show with me in September, and we did the full ball thing, and we had all that with Flair kind of, I think it was outside the Mirage Hotel in Las Vegas, talking to Mean Gene Okerlund, like, you know, the star Ric Flair is, and you know, having the phone call with Hogan, and you know, just swanning up with a load of women and carrying Hogan's WCW title belt. And then we've got Flair, the guy who on television was going nuts to the stage where Bobby Heenan had to come out and save Flair from himself. And then obviously we've got what's going to come with Flair at Uncensored when we get to it. What do you think of this kind of new side of Flair, this more mad side?
Yeah, like I say, he plays it very well, so it's not something I'm against per se. He's convincing in the role. It's all I can put it down to, is he comes across as mad, and I guess in kayfabe he has a reason for it. Hogan's retired him. It follows a logical track. I like it.
Wayne, what do you think of Vader in all this?
I'm going to level with you. I'm not so sure about the Flair and the Vader partnership. I think they're just better off separate. In all honesty, but Vader as a whole, in the obviously running up to the pay-per-view, does his job really well. Obviously beating on the jobbers per se, and just leaving up for Hogan was done well.
Yeah. Oh, go on, shit.
I do think Vader does need someone to talk for him. He is good in his role, but it's not a role that's conducive to cutting long promos. He can cut scary lines at the end of promos, so he does need a Harley Race or a Bobby Heenan or what they're moving Ric Flair into that role to do that for him. Yeah.
No, it's interesting. I mean, there were talks this month about, and we did mention it in the news. I don't know whether I get the feeling this situation is quite fluid, but they are talking about a four horseman potentially with Flair, Arn Anderson. Well, the theory goes that it would have been Flair, Anderson, Steve Austin, and Dustin Rhodes. Now we know what happened to Dustin Rhodes. Vader was the other guy named with that. I don't think Vader in a horseman type role would have worked. I mean, we know from the Clash of the Champions he looks great in a suit. I can vouch for that. But I don't know whether Vader being, you know, because what do Vader and Anderson do differently in that kind of group? I'm not so sure.
And what does Vader have in common to make him, in the way the classic Horseman looks like they belong together? How would Vader look like he belonged in that group? I don't know as if he would.
No.
He's better off on his own. And that's why I was on about the partnership with Flair is, Flair has got that kind of shine around him and taking a lot of focus off Vader, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I get the sense it's more a pairing of necessity than it was a case of we think these two guys are going to be great together. I think it was more, we've got Vader, we need to get Flair back into, well, not a program with Hogan, I don't think they're going that way, but we need to get Flair back into a program that can ultimately lead to his return to the ring, and the pairing made sense with that regard. But I agree, it's not the perfect pairing, but I think it's been great what they've done this month. I mean, I think Bobby Heenan running out from his commentary position to save Flair from himself was a genuine highlight. And the other guy I think I've got to give a lot of credit to is Nick Bockwinkel's role in all this. I'm not quite sure how much of the Bockwinkel stuff you guys would have seen, but Bockwinkel this month has been fantastic. I think he's been great ever since he took over the role around about a year ago, in the sense that while he is a commissioner, he's not a babyface commissioner, he's not a bad guy commissioner, he's a guy who just rules with fairness. We got to the show in December, Vader came in, stormed Hogan's victory party after beating Butcher, and Bockwinkel said, yeah, well, he didn't say it like this, but he said, yeah, he's acting like a bit of a dick, but he does have a very legitimate case for being number one contender, so I'm going to give him the spot. And then we get here, and Bockwinkel's basically said, no, this isn't working, and him and Flair and Bockwinkel said, yeah, we're not sanctioning what's going to happen on Sunday at Uncensored and all that. He's been good, but I thought they did very well creating a very compelling build without Hogan in those final couple of weeks, because Hogan's build was more a case of, I've got this ultimate surprise, and we'll discuss Renegade after we review Uncensored. And then we had this stuff in studio that was really good, I think. We'll come to Uncensored in a second, but I think up until this point they did really well. As for what happened at Uncensored, we're going to cover that in a minute.
You know something, Hulkamaniacs? Vader and Flair have really crossed the line this time, brothers. You know, it's not enough that they massacred Brother Dave on national TV out here, but just a few minutes ago, I get the word from my Hulkamaniacs in the dressing room that Jimmy Hart was running for his life with Vader trying to rip his jacket off him. I pray to God that Jimmy's still running, because I need him now more than ever. But right now I'm standing on the dark side, brothers, with the most powerful man I've ever met in my life. You know, this is not the ultimate warrior, Ric Flair. This is not a surprise that I just conjured up out of nowhere, brother. This is the ultimate swerve for you, Mr. Flair and Vader, and for all my Hulkamaniacs. You know, there's 100 guys like this on the dark side, all with powers way beyond any human being. But this man with me tonight is the most powerful one of all, brother. You know, I'm going to be strapped to Vader with a 12-foot strap. The largest arm in the world is so mad, I'm going to tear Vader limb from limb. But just to cover all bases, brother, I was turning over every rock. I was looking through every nook and every cranny. And then I found 1,000,000 bodies laying. And this man behind me was standing at the top of the heap. The man behind me is called the Renegade, brother. He's the biggest, most powerful man I've ever found in my life. And from now on, brothers, starting tonight at Uncensored, this big brother behind me is going to be watching my back. He's going to make sure that nobody gets in Hulk Hogan's way when I take care of all the family business, brother. You know something, the time is winding down. You're going to see him as plain as day, only when I want you to see him. But all I got to say is if you make a wrong move, if you look in the wrong direction, my man, the Renegade, is going to wipe you out, brother. And once I get Vader strapped to my wrist, once I drag him around the block 1,000,000 times, once he drops to his knees and says, please, Mr. Hogan, don't hurt me anymore, only then will I tell the brother behind me, the Renegade, not to make a move, because if you make a mistake, if you cheap shot me, Flair, or if Vader gets out of line, it Uncensored, I'm going to unleash the power of the dark side on you. The Renegade is going to take up the slack for all the Hulkamaniacs. So what are you going to do, brother, when the largest arms in the world and the Renegade are strapped to you, brother? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
And we start our review of WCW Uncensored with, well, WCW main event, which aired the hour prior to the show. Hulk Hogan opens up WCW main event, getting a very big reception. He says Jimmy Hart still has the ultimate surprise in the cage and that this is the most important match in Hogan's career. Das Wunderkind, Alex Wright, defeats Mark Starr. There are a video package showcasing Meng, in particular some very impressive martial arts training. We're then showing Richard Petty's 43 Hulk Hogan NASCAR. It's red and yellow in colour. They also show a video clip inside of the King of the Road truck. It's open, filled with plenty of hay, and to win the match you must climb to the air horn at the front of the truck and sound it. Steve Austin returns with longer blonde hair and defeats Tim Horner. Hulk Hogan is back. He says that Jimmy Hart was running for his life away from Vader. Hogan says he's with the most powerful man he's ever met in his life. He says it's not the Ultimate Warrior, it's the Ultimate Swerve. It's the Renegade. And in the background there's a lot of smoke and you can barely see the Renegade, but I thought it was quite good. They kind of just about unveiled him, but didn't showcase him in full. We get another shot from the King of the Road match. Dustin and Bully have both been loaded into the truck and in separated, caged off areas. Bischoff says they have to go beyond city limits before they're allowed to fight. The main event, it's Dirty Dick Slater and Bunkhouse Buck against Stars and Stripes. Out comes Vader, he's carrying Jimmy Hart's coat. He grabs the mic and says that Hogan can run, but he cannot hide. Vader says tonight Hogan will pay for his stupidity. Bagwell picks up the win. And then we move on to WCW Uncensored. Stewart, the results
are as follows. The Blacktop Bully defeated Dustin Rhodes in a King of the Road match. Meng, with Colonel Robert Parker, defeated Jim Duggan in a martial arts match. Johnny B. Bad defeated Arn Anderson in a boxer versus wrestler match. Randy Savage defeated the Avalanche by disqualification. Big Bubba Rogers defeated Sting. The Nasty Boys defeated Harlem Heat in a Falls Count Anywhere Texas Tornado tag team match, where Harlem Heat's tag team championships were not on the line. And Hulk Hogan, along with the Renegade, defeated Big Van Vader with Ric Flair in a leather strap match.
Wayne, what do you think of this?
The overall pay-per-view?
Yes.
Right, okay. Well, it wasn't good. I think the concept of the pay-per-view has definitely got potential. Obviously with the no DQs and anything goes uncensored type. But this, I know obviously it was the first one, but it just didn't work at all for me.
Stuart?
Yeah, this was not a good show. There was so much nonsensical stuff on it that it was hard to really enjoy anything. There were just so many negatives to this show.
Yeah, we'll come to it as we go through the show. I mean, as a wrestling show, this was horrendous in terms of there was hardly any of it. It's by no means the worst WCW show I've watched since starting this project. But as a wrestling show, there were 2 wrestling matches on this, and then just a farce everywhere else. But that being said, while the show was bad, I didn't hate it, and it was very watchable. For as bad as it was, and for as often how the action was either just not wrestling related or not very good, the time went by quite quickly, and I haven't always been able to say that about WCW pay-per-views. But we will certainly address each one of those in turn. Anyway, we start with Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan, being joined by Mike Tenay at ringside. Tenay's filling in for Mean Gene Oakland. Tenay says the first minute of the hotline will be absolutely free, and with that we join the King of the Road match in action. Obviously this isn't live, they take this a few days beforehand. Dustin is trying to reach for the horn at the front of the truck. Bully stumbles around but manages to get a low blow in on him. For reasons unknown, Dustin Rhodes is wearing a sea blue bandana. Just to set the scene for you here, basically they've got the truck, which is kind of like a flatbed type 18-wheeler truck. The inside is kind of like gutted out, and then they've got kind of wiring so you can see inside from outside to stop the wrestlers falling out. There's hay everywhere, presumably to allow them to take some bumps. We've got cameras kind of fixed on the truck. We've also got a cameraman in the cabin itself. We've then got a chase car with camera on the side, and we've also got a helicopter. So there's a number of different angles you can see this from. To be honest, this is the kind of match I think you're going to have to watch. Anyway, Dustin grabs a fence post and drives it into Bully's gut, knocking Bully to the truck floor, which is covered in hay. Dustin hits a pile driver, then lays out Bully with a bale of hay. Bully grabs a rope that's hanging along one side and chokes Dustin with it. Dustin hits a belly-to-back suplex. Bully makes some ground but ends up flying onto his back as the truck slows. It seems like Bully is bleeding at this stage. Dustin attempts to body slam but falls off balance. Briefly, a piece of wood and some hay fall from the back. Heenan asks if that was Dustin's leg. Dustin nails Bully with a trough. With that, the truck pulls up at a stop sign. Apparently they're waiting for a church bus. The action continues as Dustin crotches Bully on the ledge. Bully is quite close to falling off the truck. Bully knocks Dustin to the floor and reaches for the horn, but Dustin manages to knock him down. Bully goes for a clothesline, but Dustin ducks, and Bully gets flipped over a crossbeam in the middle of the truck. Bully then nails Dustin with a vat of water. Both men get close to the horn. Bully knocks Dustin off and hits the horn for the win. Wayne, what did you think?
Well, that was different. It was just one of them where I just couldn't get around my head what was going on altogether. You had bales of hay, you had a truck, obviously the truck going down the road. You had the police car behind it. It was very picturesque. I did like the scenery, and obviously there was a part when we was having sunset, and that was quite beautiful. But the match wasn't.
I've got a feeling the next WCW pay-per-view should just open with 20 minutes of scenic helicopter shots. That might be an improvement on what we got. Stewart, this match allegedly, and we'll come to this later when we talk about the reasons why these two will ultimately end up getting fired because of it. This match allegedly, when it ran in front of the guys who were filming it, was apparently very good. Now it should be clarified that what we saw was a 13-minute edit of a 20-minute match that had a lot of references is the wrong word, but a lot of sightings of blood that they tried to avoid in the best way they could. So we're not reviewing the full match, Stuart, but I'm finding it hard to imagine that the full match was all that much better than what we got.
Yeah, I don't see how it could be. They're obviously hampered by the fact they're on the back of a moving vehicle and how the physics of trying to move within that affects that. It was unwatchable in that it was hard to get a sense of anything that was going on, like you say, due to heavy editing and due to them just not trying to show the blood, which as the opening bout on a show called Uncensored, it is about as odd as you could get. Heavily censored 95 might be a more appropriate name.
Yeah, you're right. It's called Unsanctioned. Yeah, we're having nothing to do with this, but no, we can't show any blood. I don't even think it's fair to kind of discuss this as a wrestling match because it really wasn't. Like there was about 3 wrestling moves, and you know the ones they hit were quite good. I'll give them that. But it was like a game show almost. It was like such a kind of thing you see on a reality show.
Yeah, and there were some absolutely scary bits where the bully was climbing over the side of the truck to try and reach the horn, and it must be going 30, 40 miles an hour. If that goes wrong, that man is dead.
Yeah, because the chase car was alongside. If he'd have fell from that, he'd have got under that car.
Yeah.
Was he not climbing the cage as well when the truck turned the corner? And I was like...
Yes, he was, yes.
Yeah. Just all very weird. I mean, I don't mind wacky ideas like this. Like, almost to a point, fair play for coming up with something ridiculous and thinking it would work, and fair play for both of them for going along with it. But it didn't work. And who knows, maybe the 20-minute edit that we're never going to see was actually kind of fit. Because that was the thing, it's very, the review you got was very kind of bits and pieces. That's because what we saw was very bits and pieces, and maybe there was a bit more of a story. But I find it hard to believe the match they put together was much more coherent than what we saw, even with the 7 minutes that we missed.
Did you spot it was perhaps edited out of order in that sunset happened about halfway into the match, yet there was sunlight after it?
I didn't spot that. That is a good bit of, I didn't see that. No, that's a good spot, that. But again, it's just like there were 3 wrestling moves in this match, and that's probably the best way I can sum it up. It wasn't really a wrestling match. It was just a bit of fun and games on the back of a moving truck that could have killed Blacktop Bully. That's the long and short of it. We move on. Mike Tenay is backstage, and we have Meng in some fantastic Oriental gear. And we jump to the martial arts match, Meng with Colin Parker versus Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Duggan has decided that he's going to come out dressed in jeans, a ripped neck, sleeveless tee, and a headband. Quite what this is martial arts related, I have no idea. But he does have a white painted 2x4. We also have a Japanese referee in this match. Duggan has trouble understanding him and he refuses to bow to anybody. I've got in my notes, this is by far the most entertaining Duggan has ever been in WCW, or possibly ever. Duggan goes for one bow to May and Meng kicks him square in the head. Despite it being a martial arts match, it seems like pinfalls will decide this one. Duggan takes off his heel boot and nails Meng with it. Meng knocks in a nerve hold. Meng hits some chops in the corner. Meng locks in another nerve hold on Duggan's shoulder and then headbutts him. Despite Schiavone earlier claiming that this uncensored concept would mean that referee counts in the corners and by the ropes wouldn't count, the referee then did a 5 count when Meng was choking Duggan with his foot. Meng misses during standing elbow drops. Duggan does a 10 punch, then goes into it with the ref. Duggan hits a 3-point stance clothesline, but Meng jumps straight back up. Duggan nails Parker on the apron, but Meng profits from the distraction, hits a savate kick, and wins the match. Stewart.
I hate Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Did you like him before this match? Because I thought he was quite funny.
No, and I thought he was needlessly rude to the referee. The referee was not set up as any kind of face or any kind of heel. He was merely meant to be a martial arts referee, presumably. Duggan was a dick to him for no reason in terms of refusing to bow and all that kind of stuff. That didn't sat well with me, and I really like what they've done with Meng over the last couple of months since taking him from that bodyguard role into the wrestler role. So this was a difficult one to like.
Yeah, I like how Meng was dressed backstage with Mike Tenay. Admittedly, he had his back turned for most of that, but equally, I kind of think Meng looked better with the short hair, or the tied back hair. With the suit and the sunglasses than he did here. I thought he looked a bit too cartoonish here. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely liked him as the badass bodyguard with the sunglasses, but I guess the gimmick's morphing into Wild Man and long hair and face paint says Wild Man.
That's true. Well, Wayne, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you should actually reference that before, Bob, about it's the funniest you've ever seen Hacksaw Jim Duggan, because when I realised what the match was going to be, I thought the only way this is going to work, considering that you've got Meng, who's an absolute killer, is having Hacksaw in this comedic role. And then, obviously when he was coming in and, like you said, he had his jeans and everything like that, when he was going through the referee part, when he was being rude, all I was thinking about is, will you just wipe the floor with him now, Meng, please? Get it over with.
I think this would have been great had Meng had just laid him out with a savate kick the first time and won the match. I wouldn't have done anything
absolutely.
else.
Yeah,
totally
completely.
And I don't, like, Duggan's not going to lose anything. He'll come out on Saturday night the following week as if nothing's ever happened. They'll have ended the feud and he'll have moved on. I don't think Duggan would have lost anything here if he'd have just been laid out by Meng and taken the pinfall. And what followed, Stewart, was pretty awful.
Yeah, because Jim Duggan is not a martial artist.
No.
Simple as that, I think.
And yeah, it just didn't work, Wayne.
No, I totally agree. As I said, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and martial arts is one thing I never would have heard and thought I would have heard in a sentence before. Going to the finish, I don't think we needed that kind of finish at the end. When Duggan did the 3-point stance clothesline and Meng gets up, that's when he should have done the kick, and that's when the match should have ended.
Yeah. Yeah, they just made mistakes here. I mean, I don't know why Duggan needed a distraction from Parker to enable Meng to win the match. I don't know why Duggan needs to be protected in that way. They missed here, and it was never going to be any good anyway, but I think had the match ended after the first savate kick, we'd have gone, you know what, quite funny at the start, very quick, did its job, fine. But as it was, Dave Meltzer, I think, gave this -2 stars, and I can't really blame him. It was bad. Speaking of bad, Mike Tenay is backstage with Johnny Bad in his boxing gear and his trainer, Rock Finnegan. Video package airs for Arn Anderson. He's got a new big car. He says if he wants to break somebody's neck to retain his title, then that's what he'll do. Next up, boxer versus wrestler. Arn Anderson, the wrestler with Colonel Robert Parker, versus Johnny Bad, the boxer with trainer Rock Finnegan. Apparently there are 10 3-minute rounds scheduled for this one. In my notes I put, God help us if it goes the full distance. You can win by pinfall or submission, as in wrestling, or a 10 count, as in boxing. And Johnny B. Bad is donning the gloves. Round 1, Arn Anderson jumps in and gets clipped by a left jab. He then goes for a grab but takes another left hand. Bad gets Anderson in the corner, unloads a few body shots that send Anderson through the ropes to the outside. After another flurry, Bad gets Anderson in the corner and takes control. As round 1 ends, Bad knocks Anderson on his arse in the corner. That's the end of round 1, and Parker tells Anderson could go for Bad's legs. Round 2, Bad nails Anderson with another flurry of kicks and knocks him down. Anderson answers a boxing standard 10 count. Bad knocks Anderson down again, then again, then again. I'm pretty sure a boxing referee would have called a boxing match like this, although as Heenan points out, it's uncensored. Bad pummels Anderson until the bell, but Anderson nails Bad with a DDT during the rest period. End of round 2. Anderson goes after Bad during the rest period. Anderson shouts, "It's no disqualification." And, well, he's right. Then to round 3, Anderson dumps Bad over the top rope as round 3 begins. Anderson finally has some control, working Bad by the ropes. Anderson whips Bad into the corner and Parker holds out a stall that breaks apart. Anderson hits a spine buster, but Finnegan climbs into the ring and jumps on Anderson's back. Bad rallies with a flurry of body punches, but Anderson dumps him on the outside again. At the end of round 3, Anderson throws Bad into Finnegan. Finnegan cups Bad's left glove so he can take it off. And as round 4 begins, Finnegan puts the bucket on Anderson's head. Bad hits a left hand that knocks Anderson's sparko. The crowd pop quite big for that. Bad hits another punch with the left hand. Anderson goes down and cannot answer the 10 count. Wayne, what did you think of this?
Well, it had 2 of my pet hates. Number 1, I'm not a fan of when boxing's involved in any type of wrestling match. And number 2, it had Johnny B. Bad. I think I mentioned the last time I was on the podcast, I'm not a fan of Johnny B. Bad, and as the months have passed, my tune hasn't changed one bit. The reason I don't like it when boxing's involved is if you watch those first 2 rounds, and this match is a perfect example, is Johnny B. Bad's got a boxing background, as you can sense. How he's not knocked out Arn Anderson during those first 2 rounds is beyond me.
Stuart?
When you watch the first 2 matches of this show and you think, surely nothing after those could make less sense, they then throw you this curveball and it makes even less sense. How can you conduct a match where both people or participants have different ways of winning? One of them's wearing boxing gloves, one of them isn't. Did Johnny B. Bad have to abide by the round system, but Arn Anderson didn't? Because Arn Anderson seemed to be attacking between the rounds, yet nothing was done about it.
But it's uncensored, Stuart. That's not, well, I don't know. That was the heated line anyway.
But then there's rules, because Johnny B. Bad is adhering to one set and Arn Anderson's adhering to another. It just made so little sense.
I am going to go out on a limb. I like this. As a match that was advertised as a boxer versus wrestler match, I thought this was pretty bloody good. It didn't always make sense. Should the referee have called the match in the middle of round 2? Yes, but as Bobby Heenan pointed out, it's uncensored. Johnny Bad looked fantastic. How did he not make it in boxing? I thought that was really good, in the sense that they had the martial arts thing with Meng, and I don't think Meng has got a genuine martial arts background, so they couldn't do a lot with that, like takedown wise or anything like that. But Johnny Bad looked as convincing a boxer in a wrestling type format that I've ever seen. And some of those body shots, obviously he wasn't laying them in, because if he was, Anderson wouldn't have got back up. But those were snug, and those were very convincing. And we got, as I say, I quite liked it. I thought, it didn't go on too long. They told a nice story. Alright, yeah. You both make very valid points, which I don't really have a particularly good answer to either one of them, or any of them. But I quite enjoyed it, certainly compared to the first 2 matches and what we're going to get next, Wayne. I thought this was quite good.
Well, I think that probably says more about the last 2 matches than this one.
Well, maybe. Although Wayne, what's your problem? What's your beef with Johnny B. Bad?
I'm just not sold on him at all. He just doesn't do anything for me in a sense that where I can get behind him. I think he's cheesy, corny. And to reference what you said before, I wish he would have made it as a boxer, because I watch far less boxing than I do wrestling.
Well, there we go. Anyway, we move on. Randy Savage is backstage with Mike Tenay. He says it's no more Mr. Nice Guy, and it's Randy Savage versus Avalanche. Savage starts by trying to take down Avalanche, the classic knock the big guy off his feet spot. Avalanche gets in his face, Savage slaps him and then gets a big pop from the crowd. Savage knocks down Avalanche to the floor and then drops from the turnbuckle. Savage goes for a body slam but collapses under the weight and Avalanche only gets a 3 count. Lance drops a leg and gets a 2. Lance hits a drop kick, believe it or not, then goes for a pin. Apparently, despite this being uncensored and there being no rules, the ropes are enough to break up the pin. He's in total control. Savage rallies and climbs to the top rope, taking down Lance, but he clicks out emphatically at 1. Savage goes for a sunset flip, but Lance sits out on it. Lance goes for the Avalanche drop, but Savage crawls out of the way. Lance goes for a second rope splash, but Savage got out of the way. Savage unloaded on Lance from the outside, then a female ran out and attacked Savage. It became clear very quickly that the female in question was Ric Flair. Avalanche hits the Avalanche drop, but outruns Hulk Hogan to run the pair off. Savage was awarded the match as disqualification on a show called Uncensored with no rules. Stewart.
Yeah, see, I thought this had the potential to be quite good, as I think Randy Savage still, contrary to what Vince McMahon thinks, has a lot to offer in the ring, and Avalanche has always been one of my favourite sort of big men workers. Yes, admittedly, he's working a complete rip-off of his WWF gimmick, but as someone of his size who can do a drop kick, that's exciting to watch. But yes, why exactly did Ric Flair have to dress up as a woman? To the point where I'm guessing makeup.
Yeah, I'm guessing he lost a bet. That's the only logical. That's my only logical answer, because he could have run out. Like, you know, he could have been in a male disguise in the crowd.
Exactly. This is uncensored, so there's no rules. I mean, I know, yes, there was a disqualification finish, but technically there's no rules. So why does he have to hide who he is? And as further point to that, Ric Flair is the booker. He booked himself to dress up as a woman.
Maybe he liked it.
That is the only logical explanation I can think of.
That's the bottom line, Wayne.
Why was it a DQ finish?
I don't know. I've got no idea.
I just couldn't get it around my head at all. But I think, the part I liked the most about this match was Ric Flair in a nice perm.
Yeah. That's an image. That's an image that's never going to go away.
The best part was Flair had that makeup on the entire rest of the evening.
Yeah. He took some of it off, but there was very, very definitely eyeliner and nail polish in the main event.
Yes. How bizarre.
But why did he need to do his nails? Like nobody's looking that closely.
Was he coming in late from a night out?
Oh, maybe.
I dread to think how far he went with this costume. That's all I'm saying.
Let's not go any further. The match itself wasn't bad.
Oh, no, absolutely.
I mean, before the interruption, I mean, look, it's as good as a Randy Savage Avalanche type match is going to get. You know, you have to put a ceiling on Avalanche matches. They're never going to be more than 3 stars. Not to say this was, but that's the kind of level you're going to get. But this was your classic Randy Savage Avalanche type contest. It was quite good. And before we ever really got a chance to get anywhere close to an ending, Flair comes out. The storyline bit made sense, and it will tie itself up towards the end. But you know, Hogan came out, and the idea was Flair was trying to get to Hogan's friends. That was the idea. But yeah, so like the bit with the non-finish makes sense, even though the non-finish was on a show where there shouldn't have in theory been any non-finishes. The interference of Flair makes sense. Why he had to dress as a woman, only he will know. Anyway, because you would figure like that would have been like the losing half of a negotiation that involved Hogan losing in the main event, but apparently not. No. Anyway, Mike Tenay interviews Harlem Heat and then Sting backstage. We then get an anything goes match. Well, apparently it's Sting against Big Bubba. Bubba gets his hands near Sting's face, and so Sting bites it. Sting puts Bubba's hat on his and hits a dropkick. Bubba then retreats to the outside, and Sting then drops his hat. Bubba goes to crotch Sting in the ring post. But Sting kicks him in the face. They go for a leapfrog move, but Sting seems to catch his groin on Bubba's shoulder. Sting then starts clutching his knee, and Bubba goes to work on it, and that's basically the story of the rest of the match. Sting rallies, and Bubba keeps attacking his knee. Bubba sets for a pile driver, but Sting hits a bad dolly drop and winces in pain. Bubba locks in a leg lock, and Sting cannot break free. Bubba goes to the top rope, but slips off. Sting goes to the top and strikes Bubba with a forearm. Heenan questions Sting with doing all these moves on his bad knee. Sting then hits a body slam. Sting goes for a sleeper, and which whips the crowd up. Bubba uses his tie as a jawbreaker. Not for the first time in the show. Heenan says, it's uncensored. Sting hits a German suplex, then a big splash from the top rope, but Bubba kicks out. Sting goes for a body slam, collapses under the weight, and Big Bubba picks up the clean win. Stewart, I did not see that coming.
No, absolutely not. I thought this was about the best thing on the show, but I would still only kind of describe it as passable. But yeah, clean over Sting. Is that a reflection over where he now sits in relation to Hogan and Savage, or do they have really big plans for Big Bubba?
Just trying to think who they've got on the heel side. I mean, I guess they've got Flair at the moment. He's out of action. They've got Vader. Well, yeah, beyond that, I mean, he's kind of number 3, maybe number 4 with Avalanche.
Yeah, is he the next one to go at Hogan? Is that the reason he's got a clean pin over Sting?
You'd hope so. But I do agree it might just be a case of, yeah, we don't need Sting anymore. I mean, I'd say it wasn't a dirt clean victory in the sense that it's not like Bubba laid him out with his finisher. It was the story that Sting, was working, had a bad knee all match and then just couldn't get up under Bubba's weight. So it wasn't like that clean, but it was clean by WCW standards. It was a clean pin. Wayne, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, running through the match, all I was thinking about is how many times have I seen this style of match before, and then the finish. I was just like,
we saw it about 15 minutes earlier.
Well, yeah, true, yeah. and then the finish absolutely shocked me. It was a couple of botches in the match. I mean, I don't know whether that was intentional on when Bossman went up to the top. But the other thing as well is I can see that they probably would have done the Sting knee job throughout the match, but it seemed a bit, when he did the leapfrog, that just seemed a bit botched, and it was like they just changed it a little bit and just decided to run with it that way.
I've got a feeling he was trying. I got a feeling he was gonna do the knee on the landing, and then he got his groin caught in trying to do the leapfrog, and so he kind of injured that, or supposedly. Yeah. But I've got a feeling the leapfrog might have meant to have been clean, and then he was going to do his knee on the way down. That would have made more sense than what happened. But I'll forgive them that bit was all right. I don't think that was a big issue. Shit, what do you think of the match itself?
Yeah, like I say, it was probably the best thing on the show, and yeah, relatively well worked. I think Sting is probably the best babyface still in North America in terms of comparing his reaction to the crowd to what type of match he can deliver. So generally his matches are really quite easy to watch, and Bubba's not terrible, so yeah, it was okay.
Yeah, and Sting through Vader and through Avalanche has been working this match for the last year anyway. Just the match against the bigger, fatter heavyweight. That's basically what all he's been doing. And he's very good at it. And you say, Bubba's fine. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him. Whether they follow up on it. If given, as I say, in another company with another card, I don't think Bubba beating Sting would have been quite a significant cleanie, but given WCW, through any means necessary, will usually find a way of getting a screwy finish unless there's absolute need not to. The fact they did tells me something. I don't know what that is. I think we'll have to wait and see. But maybe Bubba and Hogan, it would make sense. Certainly Hogan's going to need an opponent now he's kept the title. Anyway, we move on, and Mike tonight is backstage with Knobs, and we go to the Tornado tag match, not for the tag team championships, and it's full to count anywhere. Harlem Heat with Sister Sherry versus the Nasty Boys. Sherry walks out with the tag titles alone. She seems to be calling out the Heat up the ramp, but nobody comes out. Out come the Nasty Boys. Sags is carrying a trash can, and Knobs swings at Sherry. Sherry motions up the ramp, and the Nasty Boys look up the ramp, then the Heat come out from behind and attack them. Heenan claims it's uncensored. We start with all 4 men brawling. The Heat do a double spike pile driver to Knobs. Sags drives Booker T into the guardrail, then body slams him on the outside. Sherry gets on the apron, so the Nasties throw her into the ring, rip off her jacket, and then give her a pit stop, which apparently is the move where they rub her face into Knobs' armpit, which I thought was quite funny. Move up the R-way. Knobs takes her up and nails Booker T with a garbage bin. We then make our way to a very, very cordoned off gimmicks concession area. Ray rubs candy floss into Sags' face. The area then becomes very slippery with all the liquid on it. Knobbs coats both members of the Heat in mustard. They're just rolling around at this point. The floor is like an ice rink pretty much. Sags headbutts Ray in the groin. In the background, Knob hits a body slam and gets a 3 count. Sags then sends Sherry flying on the slippy surface, and she hit that hard at the end of the match. Wayne, what do you think of this?
Well, just like the King of the Road match, it was an absolute mess. But this one, I actually enjoyed, just for the sheer fact of how ridiculous it was when there was at that believable concession stand. Drinks and wrestling don't mix. That's a given. And gotta love Sherry. I mean, she takes more bumps than your main event champion.
Well, yeah, that is Hogan, but yeah, I know what you mean. Takes a lot of bumps.
Yeah.
I can't believe you enjoyed this, Wayne. I mean, I was kind of cringing at how bad it was and kind of just how embarrassed. Because before the match in the Knobbs promo, I probably should have mentioned it in my review, thinking about it now. Knobbs talked about, and he'd have mentioned it like in the build-up as well, about how, we could go anywhere in the arena. We've got cameras all over the place. If they're going to go outside the arena, we can follow them outside. We get the match and they go down the aisleway to the left. We get this concession area. There is nobody around. You could have figured that at least with a gimmick concession area, put some plants in the way, like calling off the general public. If you want to do that, I kind of understand that. Put some plants in and then have the plants scarper when things get a bit heated. But they get there, the place is completely empty. Nothing has been sold. They start attacking each other with the stuff on the concession stands. It's on a wooden floor which gets coated in liquid. This one, you'd have to watch it to fully grasp it, but they couldn't get any grip at all. I think ice rink is probably a very good explanation for it. Stewart, what do you think?
I will agree with Wayne and thought this had absolutely fantastic comedy value.
Comedy I'll give you, but I was more kind of really more because like we know the Nasty Boys have got so much more than this on a show called Uncensored, and this was what we got. I was more disappointed, but I agree it was quite funny, if a little dangerous.
I mean, to put it in context with all the other sorry for cutting you off, Stuart. To put it in context with all the other matches, the fact that when something is that bad, it eventually turns into something that's that is pretty good. And the fact that you're watching everyone fall over and try and balance, and you've got Sherry using heels, I thought it was brilliant just for that reason.
Was I the only one who missed the finish live?
No, it didn't show the finish. They only showed the finish on replay.
I think it did happen in the background, but the camera wasn't focused on it.
No, absolutely not.
I think. But, yeah, this was... For me, this was the low point on the show by an absolute mile. Not to say that the mixed martial arts match was bad. Sorry, martial arts match. Mixed martial arts is something very different. The martial arts match wasn't bad. It certainly was. But this was just embarrassing in the sense that it was more kind of an indictment of WCW as a company. And there were others on this show as well. 2 guys getting fired for blading on a pre-tape. 2, Hulk Hogan hitting Vader with a chair and then having to pan to a wide angle in the main event because they don't want to show it. On a show called Uncensored. I mean... I don't know. It's not uncensored. It should have been Heden's line. But this was just horrible. Just in terms of, like, nothing happened, and it was more of an indictment of how bad it was. But I will agree, if you look at it, because, I mean, I was quite worried that Sherry got hurt, because she slapped that ground hard, because, like, Sags just grabbed her and just threw her, like, across the, ice rink, you want to call that. And she lost her footing, like, the minute she planted her foot, and then just went boom, like that. And I thought, well, that could have been anything. But thankfully it seems she's okay. But yeah, just not great. But we move on.
Thanks very much, Tony Schiavone. And joining me at this time, the 450-pound...
Shut up, Bob! Hogan! The time is before you! The demon stands before you! The fear is here! The fear is there! Hogan! There's no place else to run! There's nowhere else to hide! It is time to get it on! You must now pay for your stupidity. It is uncensored, unsanctioned, and Mr. Flair is in my corner! Between the two of us, there's an unprecedented 23 world titles! Hogan, get ready to get it on. get ready to play the pain game. It's over. The talk is over. Hulkamania is over. And it's Vader time.
I think it goes like this. You don't like it? Do something about it. You see this? Not just another pretty face, but the face of a man possessed. Possessed with you, Hogan. My whole career, they said Hulk Hogan's bigger. They said he's better. They said you can't beat him. Get out of here. They said you can't beat him. And I said, bring him on, let me touch him. Then Hogan, you take me out of my element. You take me out of my life. You retire me. Am I going to walk off into the sunset? Say goodbye forever? No. I become the master plan. I become the man possessed with taking you out of this sport forever. Okay. So what do? I get the biggest.
Okay. After Super Brawl 5, the whole world saw who the man is, and you're looking at him. And after tonight, brother, they will know who the uncrowned heavyweight champion of the world is. Vader time, Flair time, uncensored, unsanctioned. Tune in, brother, because it's live and in color.
Hogan, we're coming your way. Woo! Woo!
Mike tonight is with Vader. Vader rips the mic from him. Vader is quickly becoming a great promo. That's what I put anyway. I guess, Stuart, you disagree with that earlier. But Stuart, I thought he was very good here.
He's good in short bursts, but I just don't think the character works delivering longer promos.
Yeah, well, I would say more he can deliver long promos, but he shouldn't, would be how I would phrase that.
Yeah, I'd go with that then, yeah.
Anyway, and Flair joins him, and he's still wearing eyeliner from earlier. Flair says he's possessed with Hogan. Flair asks whether Hogan expects him to walk off into the sunset. Flair says he's going to take Hogan out. And we get to the main event for the WCW World Heavyweight title. Vader with Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan. Flair is still at ringside. Vader shoves down the referee, and Hogan is very much in a handicap situation. And then the Ultimate Warrior comes out. It says it's not him, but the music was bloody close. It's the Renegade, and so not many people popped, but a few people definitely reacted like this was the Ultimate Warrior. There was a guy near the camera side who went berserk. He was alone. Gosh,
I will say the crowd thought this was the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
Not just one bloke. The crowd thought it was the Ultimate Warrior.
Well, if they did, wouldn't they have popped more? I mean, because in my notes I thought it was a big pop, but when I watched it back, it wasn't that big.
No, I thought it was a pretty big pop, and like you say, the music was similar enough. The physique at a distance of the Renegade is similar enough. The hair is similar enough that when he legs it down to the ring, if you're in the crowd and you couldn't quite see, you'd probably be pretty sold that was the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah. I mean, I guess they mitigated it into a point by having Hogan unveil that it wasn't the Warrior at the start of the show. I guess there was that. We were expecting Hogan to unveil someone. It wasn't the Ultimate Warrior. He went as far as to say that in main event. So I guess there's that. But anyway, the Renegade comes out with some knockoff Ultimate Warrior music with a red and yellow R on his face. Apparently they did debate having him go the full hog with the Warrior face paint, but decided against it. And they were apparently also debating calling him the Ultimate Renegade, and then decided against that. I think in both cases they were right.
They were right.
We'll come to that in a bit. Flair goes to strike him in the RA, but Renegade fights him off. Hogan is working Vader up against the ring apron. Renegade is still scaring Flair at ringside, and Hogan is tearing into Vader in the ring, whipping him with the strap. Flair gets in the ring, but he gets strapped by Hogan. Flair and Renegade go chest to chest. Renegade is no-selling everything. Vader and Hogan get into a tug of war with the strap. Vader uses it to his advantage. Vader lands a Vader bomb. Vader then removes the strap from Hogan's wrist and whips him with it across the back. Out runs Jimmy Hart. His shirt is ripped. His tie is kind of clung around his neck. The story they told this evening is that Hart was disappeared earlier after being attacked. We make our way out to the R-way. Vader grabs a chair, but the camera pans away. Hart distracts him. Hogan grabs the chair and strikes Vader lightly 2 or 3 times. Takes the run up. The camera pans to a wide shot, and Hogan nails him with a chair. Hogan reattaches the strap and uses it to pull Vader into the ring post. Hogan hits another chair shot, and once again they go to the wide angle. Flair and Renegade square off in the ring. Flair bounces off him, then just runs off. The commentators point out there has been no attempt to win the match by either man so far. Hogan gets the strap between Vader's legs and uses it to flip Vader over. Hogan body slams Vader on the outside. Flair climbs to the top turnbuckle. Renegade climbs to the opposite turnbuckle. Vader goes to slug Renegade, who no-sells it. Back in the ring, Vader chokeslams Hogan, then hits a splash. Vader hits a suplex, but Hogan springs back up. Hogan hits an incredibly soft big boot. They get really weak these days. Then a leg drop before finally starting towards all four corners. Then a masked man runs out, levels Renegade with a wooden chair. Flair levels Hogan with the chair. Flair levels Renegade for good measure. Vader gets to three corners, but Flair convinces him to splash Hogan onto the chair. Vader, amazingly, goes for a second rope senton. Hogan moves and Vader lands hard on the chair. Flair drags Vader out of the ring, grabs another chair and hits Hogan over the back. Hogan no-sells it, hulks up, then starts unloading on Flair. Hogan then attaches the strap to Flair, drags him around all four corners, and apparently wins the match. Heenan quite rightly calls it the hypocrisy of all of this. Apparently the match is over. Renegade grabs a chair and goes to run off the pair, but the masked man comes out with a chair. Then we cut to the apron and Arn Anderson comes out dressed in black and tied up. He obviously was another masked man. We cut back to the ring and Randy Savage is the masked man and he runs off the heels. Stewart, quickly, if Randy Savage tied up Arn Anderson, why was Arn Anderson still in the masked man gear? Because then it implied that Randy Savage had his own version.
Yeah, presumably he just owns his own set of masked man gear.
Right, that makes sense.
On everything that's happened in this show, let's just go with it.
Well, all right, fair enough. Like, either it's a really simple oversight or it's leading to something big. I'm inclined to think it's the former. Stuart, what do you think of this match?
What a mess!
That was exactly what I thought.
Yeah. Right down to how on earth does Hogan win the match by I mean, it's almost a joke at this point, isn't it? The amount of times Hogan's beaten Flair over the last year. He's now beating Flair in matches that Flair isn't even in.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, I agree. The what a mess line was exactly my summary of this match. Wait. Go on, mate.
Yeah, sorry. Without the commotion, I think this match would have been a lot better than what it was. There was just far too much going on. All the focus was on Renegade and Flair on the outside rather than what was happening on the inside. But is it me or is this pay-per-view Hogan's perfect pay-per-view? He gets to do all of his heel moves and no one will blink an eye. Not that anyone does anywhere, but everything would have fitted with it.
Well, I don't think he scratched anyone's back, which it seems to be a trope of Hogan's matches in WCW.
No, but he loves a good strangle.
That's true. He did use the chair, but in Hogan's defence, Vader had used that chair already, and I think once a heel uses a weapon, I think the babyface wrestling says that the babyface then is entitled to, and plus it is uncensored, and all of that. But I agree with you, Wade, in the sense that the strap match part of this match I thought was quite good. The problem was that it made up about 30% of the overall action, which was the biggest problem. I thought the actual Hogan and Vader stuff with the strap, the bit where Hogan had Vader's strap tangled between his legs and he pulled on it and Vader then did a front flip was quite good. All that interaction was good, Wayne, but there was just too much else going on.
Far too much else going on.
Yeah. Stuart?
Yeah, I'm just going to go back to the line of what a complete mess. If you take away all the distractions, Hogan and Vader would probably be quite capable of having a pretty decent strap match. But, yeah, just what were they thinking?
Stuart, this post-match stuff, I mean, forgetting the thing with that, was it well executed with the kind of the double fake with the masked man and Savage comes out? I thought that was quite clever, even if there was the little oversight. I thought they did that pretty well.
Again, it just looks weird, like Arn Anderson hopping out tied up. It's all a bit wrong.
Yeah.
Ric Flair in drag, Arn Anderson in some sort of bondage suit tied up. It's what are WCW trying to imply?
Well, it is uncensored.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. What a mess is a perfect way to describe this match. It could have been so much more, although admittedly, because the story behind all this, and we'll get to it in a bit, but the story behind all this was that basically, once Flair worked out that neither man was going to lose, he had to come up with a finish. And despite what we saw earlier with the Savage match, apparently they didn't want to do a double DQ, despite the fact you could have ended this match, I suppose, in any number of ways that could have ended in a no result. But yes, we did legitimately end up with a match between Vader and Hulk Hogan ending when Hulk Hogan dragged Ric Flair around all four corners. I've no idea. Stewart, your overall thoughts on the show and a score rating?
This was a bad show. There were elements of it that had comedy value, but then there were elements of it that was too annoying to be enjoyable. If we're giving a score out of 10, it's a 2 or a 1.
Wayne?
Totally, yeah, agreed. 2, being kind, giving it a 3. I mean, at least half of the guys on this show need to go, basically. It just seemed far too much of them now. Yeah,
I know what you mean. Well, at least we didn't get Kevin Sullivan on the show, so that's a positive. But yeah, no, I'd be inclined to agree with that. I gave it a 3. I didn't hate, as I say, that in terms of WCW shows that I've ever covered, this was in the bottom quarter in terms of in-ring action, and that, I suppose, in some ways is saying how bad some of the WCW stuff has been for in-ring action, given that it is only in the bottom quarter, and it is not the worst. Stuart, you've seen Battle Ball, haven't you? I made you watch that.
I have indeed. You did. Is recommend the right term?
Whatever the opposite of recommend is, like just punishment.
Yeah, just endless tag matches where every story is the same, and I think by the end you do just want to hang yourself.
Yeah, that was how bad that was. This was better than that. And I will say this, bottom quarter in terms of the quality of the shows, but top third in terms of how watchable the show was, in that a lot of it was pretty awful, but the time went by pretty quickly. I was never bored. The King of the Road match wasn't very good, but there was enough notoriety behind it to keep me interested. The martial arts match, Duggan was funny. The 5 minutes it lasted was 5 minutes too long, but whatever. I did enjoy the Boxer versus Wrestler match. The actual wrestling in the middle wasn't that bad, given the guys involved. The tag match was embarrassing, and the main event was a mess. But again, in terms of, as a recommendation for this show, if you want to watch wrestling, go as far away from this show as you can. But if you want to watch a show, I won't say to be entertained, but just as something different, I would probably recommend this show on that basis.
If you've recently had...
go on, Stuart.
If you've recently had a lobotomy, I'd definitely recommend it.
Well, yeah. Wayne?
No, I was just going to say, I mean, what other show can you see Flair in drag, Arn Anderson in bondage gear, and don't forget a half-naked Jimmy Hart?
Yeah.
A
fake Ultimate Warrior, a match on the back of a truck. This show had everything.
It does feel like the sort of thing you will tell people to seek out just to show how bizarre WCW is.
Yeah. But put it this way, I'd probably watch this show more than I will watch Super Brawl, just because, well, I suppose that's probably harsh on Super Brawl, but other shows, back third of last year when WCW pay-per-views were getting really bad, I would probably recommend this above some of those, just because at least it's car crash watchable in that sense. I think that's the way of summing it up.
As promised, Commissioner Nick Bockwinkel visited this week by Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man Randy Savage, and he said you need to see what happened. Our cameras were there, and here's exactly what happened.
Wrestling fans, we told you at the top of the program today that WCW heavyweight champion Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage came to me with a request that was so startling that I felt that you, the fans, should share and see it. And at this time, in my office, I have with me Randy Macho Man Savage,
right,
world champion, Hulk Hogan.
You know, after the last 20 minutes, Bachman, you got to say that the Macho Man and Hulk Hogan don't have a request. We've got a pretty strong case. You know, the Hulkamaniacs are demanding this thing, brother. Ric Flair was in my face in Baltimore, man. He put Dave Sullivan in the hospital. You know, of course, at Uncensored, we knew he'd be hovering around the ring, man. But he's completely out of line, isn't he, Macho Man?
Face it, Commissioner Nick Bachman. lost control of the situation. You're powerless at this point, and things are out of control already, so why don't we go to complete mental insanity, get him reinstated, and that's the only way you'll ever gain power again. He dressed in drag. What else will he do?
Well, you know, he's totally out of control, brother. And now that we know that he's been barred from the buildings, that he can't come to any WCW matches, that's a bunch of bull, brother. We want Ric Flair back in the ring. Yes, it's a demand from Macho Man and the Hulkamaniacs. That's the only way we can get our hands on him. So now that you told us that you can't do anything about it, now that you've got to go to the executive committee, brother, case in point, the facts are this. He was in our face in Baltimore. Sullivan went to the hospital. Uncensored, he was out of control, and it's going to go on and on and on. We want him in the ring, brother. Jimmy Hart's a man. 24 hours a day. Get it done with Hart. Get it done.
Let me promise you this, that there will be a vote next week by the executive board, and according to that vote is the way we will go. I will take your request. They will hear it. They will feel it. They will see it.
Saturday 25th of March brings us to the first WCW Saturday night after WCW Uncensored. Word is that Dave Sullivan was injured following the beatdown last week. Nick Bockwinkel says he's met with Hogan and Savage and that it was astounding. On Vader, Bockwinkel says the fines don't seem to be working for him, so he's being stripped of the United States heavyweight title. On the hotline, peddled by Tony Schiavone in Mean Gene Okerlund's absence, he says that there are rumours that 3 very prominent wrestling superstars are WCW bound. Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan are in Nick Bockwinkel's office. The complaint is about Ric Flair. Savage says the situation is out of control and calls for Flair's reinstatement. Hogan wants Ric Flair back in the ring. Bockwinkel says there will be a vote next week by the WCW Executive Board. Colonel Robert Parker, after a squash match, says he's standing next to the next World Heavyweight Champion, Meng. We cut to London, and Lord Stephen Regal is with beautiful Bobby Eaton. They're going for dinner. A waiter asks if Regal wants Eaton removed. Regal declines. Regal is appalled by Eaton's lack of class and decorum. Steve Austin cuts a promo, says many in WCW thought they'd never see him again. He described himself as the #1 piece of wrestling talent in the world. He is targeting the vacant US title en route to the world title. The breakup of the 3 Faces of Fear continued on WCW Pro after the trio lost to Stars and Stripes and Jim Duggan. It very much seemed to be Butcher breaking away from the other 2, but Sullivan and Butcher did win a squash tag match on Saturday night. In a post-match promo, Butcher says everything is fine between the pair. In the main event, Randy Savage faced Avalanche in a rematch from WCW Uncensored. Schiavone on commentary says that there are rumours that Ric Flair will purchase TV time to appear next week. Sullivan and Butcher run out, but Savage and the referee manage to fight them off. Savage drops the elbow and wins the match. The 3 Faces of Fear go to attack Savage, but Sting runs them off. On main event on March 26, Regal and Eaton visit a clothing store. Regal looks increasingly irritated by Eaton's fashion choices before getting him tailored in a smart suit and slicking back his hair. In the main event, Sting defeated the Butcher after Sullivan messed up an interference, elbow dropping Butcher by mistake. Sullivan looked despondent at Butcher, continuing the slow burn breakup of the 3 Faces of Fear.
Well, they call them the Natural.
Dustin Rhodes, the Blacktop Bully, and road agent Mike Graham were fired by WCW in the aftermath of the King of the Road match at WCW Uncensored. The reason cited was that Rhodes and Bully both knowingly broke WCW company policy regarding blading in the match, and that Graham was in charge and let it happen. It's even said that Graham may have brought the blades himself to help. The story is odd for a number of reasons. Firstly, the match itself didn't air live. It was taped a number of days before on the outskirts of Mississippi. The full match lasted 20 minutes, and the few people involved in it, which included people in the truck itself, a chase car and a helicopter, all said that the 20-minute match was excellent. But due to WCW policy, despite the show being called Uncensored, The match was edited down to about 13 minutes in length, and any obvious close-ups of either men after they had cut themselves were removed. The match, if it ever had a chance, was ruined. Quite why the trio would be fired as a result is a mystery. A couple of weeks prior, Hulk Hogan bled during a Chicago main event against Vader. With the match pre-taped days before, the possibility of even retaping it was considered, but the company decided the cost of the helicopter was likely prohibitive. The real answer likely lies in WCW cutbacks. Higher-ups had ordered Eric Bischoff to cut $500,000 from WCW's yearly budget. Paul Roma, having been fired following the Alex Wright match at Super Brawl, seems to have started this process, and cutting Harley Race, who was recovering from a car accident at the time, helped things. But it is speculated that losing the budget for Bully, Rhodes and Graham would get WCW near or over the $500,000 mark required.
Thank you to Colin for that, and to Del for stepping into Stewart's shoes on the pre-tape front. We will start with the bit we just listened to about the Blacktop Bully, Dustin Rhodes and Mike Graham being fired. Stewart, as we covered in the pre-tape, there may very well be financial reasons why all this is. Perhaps we could file under convenience rather than anything else, but on the surface, it is quite hard to work out why two guys were fired for breaking policy on blading after a road agent came along, gave them blades on a pre-tape match that didn't have to air live on a show called Uncensored 2 weeks after Hulk Hogan had bladed against Vader. It doesn't really make sense.
Oh, no, absolutely not. It's especially from the point of view of if I'm at work and I have somebody in a position of authority above me tell me to perform a particular task in a particular way.
I was going to say, like somebody above you telling you to cut your forehead. That might be a bit different.
Okay, but that's in context of the job they do, though, isn't it? That's not particularly uncommon, admittedly, in recent years. And like you say, Hogan had done it on television not a month prior.
What wasn't on TV? It was a live event. I should point that out. But yes, carry on.
But if someone who's essentially my line manager would tell me to perform a particular task in a certain way, and I go ahead and do that, well, I would not expect to be fired for that.
No, you certainly wouldn't, and particularly given that because their rationale for not retaping the match was we can't afford the helicopter. But watching it back, I kind of thought, well, you can't see their bleeding from the helicopter shots. Just edit in the wide angles, and if you really want to retape it, go and retape it. But to fire guys for a pre-tape, given that I don't know, maybe the match was great, but it's not like, I don't think anyone was expecting this to be a 5-star classic. It was the opener on a show. It wasn't like it was the main event or anything like that. And Wayne, as Stewart says, they were following instructions.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a cheap excuse to fire them. Like you said with Hogan a couple of weeks ago, one rule for one and another for another. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's on a live show, then understandable. But this was a pre-taped, I'd like to call it match, but as they're in back of a truck. So the edited it, you couldn't really tell that they bladed. I think it's just very, very cheap to just fire them like that.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, I think the true answer lies in the fact that, we're about to cover, and obviously covered in the news, the company need to find a hole in their budget because, Hogan's burning a hole in their back pocket, and they need to find $500,000. Paul Roma got himself fired last month, which, as we discussed last month, I don't think was under all that silly, given that Roma went into business for himself. But yeah. Like the true answer probably lies in the budget cutting thing. I think if Dustin Rhodes is considering legal action, he's probably got quite a good case. If that's the case, just all a bit unsavoury and a shame because a bigger shame because I was going to say about Bully and I know I quite like the Bully debut, but I don't think it's particularly worked since then. But a shame, Stewart, in the sense that Dustin Rhodes was a guy who I think, give it a year, given that his dad is pretty well off WCW-wise, I think Dustin would have been up and near the main roster, the main event rather.
Oh, absolutely. Dustin, over the past 3 or 4 years, has been someone who has shown visible signs of progress towards contributing at a main event level. And like you say, he's certainly got the pedigree and he's certainly got the political power. So for him to get fired over something like this, surely it just seems something like worthy of, if you want to do it, slap on the wrist. Don't do that again. Okay, I won't.
Yeah, and a pre-tape as well. That's what makes no sense. If it's live, I guess it is different because it's then, well, you ruined our shot. But equally, the idea that they couldn't have retaped it on the basis of the helicopter, I think was bizarre. I guess there's other things when they got a police escort through this match. So I guess there are other things involved and you've got to get the truck back and all that kind of thing. But yeah, just all very bizarre and, you know, they were talking of Dustin being in the Four Horsemen or a new Four Horsemen with Austin. That could have been good. We're not going to see that again. And apparently he is already looking at WWF, so we'll see how that develops. Apparently Dusty was thinking of quitting, but has since been talked round. So there's that. But yeah, Dustin is gone, and he may very well appear in the WWF in the next few months.
I think it's a blessing in disguise for him, Bob.
Is it? What given that in the WCW, given where his dad is, wouldn't he have got near the top?
Well, who's got more power, Dusty or Hogan?
But Dusty's got some power. I mean, he might not be. I don't think Dustin Rhodes is going to walk into the WWF and become their champion. I think, if anything, they might hire him and then think, well, he's Dustin's kid, or Dusty's kid, let's take the piss out of him a bit. Like the thing with what they did with Dusty, with the American Dream thing and the dancing thing and all that kind of stuff.
I think
if I'm getting my history right.
I think he's definitely someone that they could bring in. I mean, especially given the level of talent on the WWF roster right now, he is someone you could see slotting in as a mid-card babyface champion in that sort of Razor Ramon type slot.
Yeah. I think he's a guy people want to cheer as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I think the fact that Hogan's friends are getting more of a push is says a lot about that company. And like you said, the way that WWF is, bringing in or building up young stars, he could go in there and obviously, as Stewart said, it'd fit that babyface mid-card role perfectly and had the potential to build up from there as long as they don't dress him up in polka dots,
God, that's no. Oof, yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Could you see a Dustin Rhodes Shawn Michaels match? I could see as being absolutely fantastic
if they gave it the chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we'll see. I mean, all right, Wayne, I disagree with the idea that he was in a bad spot in WCW. He might not have got to number one, but I think given who his dad was, he'd have got pretty close. But equally, yes, there is certainly more movement for more room for upward momentum in the WWF. I wouldn't disagree with that.
Johnny and Steve back on Saturday night and looking awesome. And of course, we heard at the top of the program, Vader stripped of the U.S. heavyweight title. I want to talk to you about that. But last Sunday on the main event, we saw Colonel Rob Parker come out and watch you wrestle. What's to that?
Before I get on to Colonel Parker, you say I come out here and I'm looking awesome. I've always looked awesome, but I can see the look in your eyes and you try to buddy up to me. You act like you're happy to see me. I know you're not, and I know a lot of faces in World Championship Wrestling never thought they'd see me again. Colonel Parker being out here, maybe he wanted to see the next United States champion. The title I never lost to begin with. Hey man, I've been gone for 4 months. 4 months ago when I left, I was the number one piece of wrestling talent in the whole world. It's today, and I'm still the number one piece of wrestling talent in the world. You don't have to sit there and watch me ramble about it. All you gotta do is watch your TV. I'll prove it each and every time I go out. The U.S. title, another step as I climb that mountain to the World Heavyweight Championship where the gold sits on top of the mountain. When I get to the top of the mountain, whether it's Hulk Hogan, whether it's Ric Flair, whether it's Sting or the Macho Man,
The feud between Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan may be simmering on screen, but this month saw it go into overdrive as the pair clashed off-screen with power struggles within the company intensifying. Currently, and at the time of recording, this is still correct, Flair remains head booker, but his power in that role is diminishing as WCW continues to secede to the whims of Hulk Hogan. Hogan, ever since he joined the company, has had the power over his own storylines, and while that doesn't officially stretch any further, the company has been listed in a Hogan-led direction ever since the acquisition of many of Hogan's friends from 1980s WWF, The Butcher, Jim Duggan, Randy Savage and others. This has come to a head this month, with reports from within the company of a shouting match between Flair and Hogan. Flair's hands seem to be tied with the overall direction of the top storylines, with no control over Hogan's storyline or indeed his schedule, best illustrated by frustration backstage as Hogan didn't appear at the TV tapings in the 2 weeks prior to Uncensored. Flair's frustrations continued as it turns out Randy Savage too would like similar levels to control over his storylines as Hogan gets, but the problems are probably best illustrated in this fact with the occasions that the entire booking committee are flown to Florida so that Hogan and Jimmy Hart, a man whose own power is increasing, don't have to fly to Atlanta. The entire situation is likely what led to the ending in the main event at Uncensored. Once Vader realised that Hogan wasn't going to do the job for him, Vader himself refused to play ball. For once a screwy or a DQ finish known to WCW seemed impossible due to the stipulation of the pay-per-view, and that's how we ended up getting a strap match that ended with Hogan dragging Flair around the ring. Art imitating life, it would seem. The entire story unfolds under a backdrop of change within WCW. Harvey Schiller has replaced Bill Shaw as the head of the company. Schiller comes with a background in sports and is the current head of TBS Sports, which WCW now comes under within TBS as a company. It's said that Eric Bischoff will still be in charge of the company's decisions, or at least most of them, although Hogan's power base seems even stronger. And if that's not enough, it's also said that Schiller wants to make WCW a more kid-friendly product with an even greater focus on Hogan.
I would move on now to talk, as we just heard, about the politics, Stewart. Lots and lots of Hogan and Flair related politics. What do you think of all this?
I think WCW could have seen this coming a mile off, really, couldn't they? It's any time you give power to a performer that gives him greater power than the person he works for, it's going to cause trouble, isn't it?
Yeah. Wayne?
I'm just surprised it took as long as it did. If it wasn't already the Hogan show, it soon will be. You just can't give that amount of power to someone who's at the top, which he is. He's the main event champion, and obviously totally different from when he was in WWF because he had to answer to somebody who was calling the shots, and obviously here he's
I wouldn't say it was totally different to the WWF. I mean, you guys will be able to speak to this better than I will, but I mean, there's the thing about him on the way out that, the title went to Yokozuna because Hogan didn't want a job for Bret Hart.
Yeah, sorry, no, go on.
Can someone clarify that for me? Was that how it went down?
As far as I'm aware, that's the story, that Hogan didn't want to put Bret Hart over, and therefore he was more willing to put that monster type character over.
Yeah. But I mean, it is difficult in the sense that things would be far better with WCW without Hogan, but things would also probably be far smaller. And that it is the issue when you bring in a guy and give him this much power. But I almost wonder whether, you look at what's happening in WCW in the last 12 months and the guys they've brought in. It has become a very Hogan-centric company, not just for the guys they brought in ring with the likes of Duggan, Avalanche, Butcher, etc., etc., etc. Savage to a point, although you could justify Savage without that. But also just, guys like Heenan, Okerlund, Jimmy Hart, all of that. They brought all these guys in, but equally there are more eyeballs on the product now Hogan's in there than he's not. But this is the downside, and all this stuff with, decided, then fly, almost hilariously, then flying kind of the committee to Florida because they didn't want to fly Hogan and Jimmy Hart, another guy who's increasing in power in the company, to Atlanta. It is quite funny as well. But Stewart, it is quite scary when I hear stories of there being a change in power at TBS in terms of the guy overseeing WCW, and the new guy wants to put even more emphasis on Hogan. I don't know how you do that.
That was exactly about to be my question. How do you, short of paying Hogan to wrestle in every match and cut every interview, make the promotion more centred around him? How do you do that?
WCW Hulk Hogan Saturday Night.
I guess, or, you rename a pay-per-view Hulkamania or something like that.
We're giving them ideas now. Yeah, but no, I know what you mean. I mean, that's the thing, like, with all the Hogan stuff, like, I've never really had the problem I've had with the Hogan stuff is what comes with it. The whole thing of Hogan kind of having control of his own storylines, to a point, I think you can kind of justify that this is the price of having Hogan in power, or having Hogan at the top. But equally, Hogan's worth it. My problem with the Hogan stuff has been all the other things that have come as a result, that I don't get the sense that Hulk Hogan was signing a contract with WCW and went, look, I'm not going to sign if you don't bring in Avalanche. I don't think that was a problem. But equally, I think it was more, well, Hogan's getting influence, and it's like, we need some new workers. Hogan's like, well, I know this guy called Earthquake, or John Tenter. He's quite good. And they're like, well, Hogan's the guy. Hogan's the guy. If it's a recommendation from him, we're going to take it. And also the fact that they do seem to, this will segue quite nicely into point number 3 of this discussion, they do seem to be very quickly turning into 1980s WWF way, because they've just debuted a fake Ultimate Warrior.
Yep. Ultimate surprise. More like ultimate rip-off. I mean, what are they thinking about altogether? I mean, you've got guys who are having exactly the same gimmick or near enough alike as what they had in the competition, and now you're just bringing in another guy in who, like you said, is just an absolute rip-off of an Ultimate Warrior gimmick. I don't know, I mean, you might know more than me, but as they was building, Ultimate Surprise and mentioning everything about Ultimate this and Ultimate that, was Ultimate Warrior meant to be coming in and he changed his mind at the last minute and then there was rush with this? I'm not quite sure.
It never got that close. No, it never, the name Ultimate Warrior has been name dropped by me and Gene Okerlund previously regarding hotlines and things like that. Although, as we covered last month, me and Gene Okerlund couldn't really give a shit about whether anything he says on the hotline has any legitimacy or not. But the name Ultimate Warrior has been name dropped, and there have been stories in the Torch and the Observer that Warrior is around. That's what I'm hearing. He's around. He is talking with people, but I don't get the sense he's that close to an in-ring return. But no, in this case, it wasn't a crap, the deal's fallen through, we promised them the Ultimate Warrior, because I think if they had the Ultimate Warrior, they would have said so. So I think it was more, this was the plan. We can't get Warrior, or perhaps to a point they can't afford him. That might have been it as well. We will bring in a guy who is quite a bit of a rip-off of him, which didn't really work. Go on, Wayne.
I was going to say, despite him being an absolute carbon copy of Warrior, I mean, I will give him one thing, and that is he is actually a lot more agile than the actual Ultimate Warrior.
Yes. And then, Stuart, we've got the next thing, which is this guy they've signed called Paul White, who apparently is 7'2". Apparently he can do a drop kick, which would put Avalanches to shame, I would guess. And I cannot wait for when he comes in as Andre the Giant Jr., which is probably what they're going to call him.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. If they're bringing in a fake Ultimate Warrior, then where do you stop? Fake Andre the Giants, fake one-man gangs, fake King Kong Bundys.
Well, I mean, you could start going to the point where you can just find the real ones. I mean, Sergeant Slaughter's still around.
Well, yeah, I guess.
I mean, you can keep going to a point. I just wonder whether... Well, I wonder whether I think I know this is a bad idea, because Savage, I don't know, the knockoff things doesn't make sense. I can understand bringing in Hogan and Savage. I can't really, because nobody's gonna watch that and go, oh look, it's the Ultimate Warrior. They're not gonna do that. So what's the point? because even if they try to suspend their disbelief, it's not the Ultimate Warrior. It's that kind of character is not going to work as someone else. Part of the reason the Ultimate Warrior was so great was because it was Jim Hellwig. It wasn't because it was a guy dressed in a costume who was jacked up to the gills. It helped. But it worked because it was him and he was the only guy to have done it. And now it's not. But yeah, that will end our discussion for this month. I would firstly like to thank Wayne Lythgoe.
Thank you.
Wayne, you're on Twitter.
Yep. Wayne L84. That
one. And Stewart Brookes.
You're welcome. Always a pleasure, Bob.
Stewart, you've got your own podcast and your own gig reviewing WWF. You're mid-96 now?
Yeah, we're about pretty much bang on a year ahead of you. Just this morning we recorded Beware of Dog, which is May 1996.
And people can find that podcast. Well, tell us a bit more about it and where they can find it and all that stuff.
Like you say, it's just reviewing the WWF pay-per-views from the mid-90s. We have touched on WCW as well, which seems to be surprisingly popular considering the quality of some of the shows. We're on iTunes, as I'm sure everyone generally is. We're also on SoundCloud as well, and Facebook and Twitter. The Twitter is at New Gen Podcast.
And Facebook?
Facebook.com/New Generation Project Podcast. Slightly more complicated, that one.
Yes. Anyway, that will conclude this month's show. We haven't finished yet. We've got the beginning of part 2 to record. But you can find me on Twitter at Bamber. You can find the podcast on Twitter at Wrestling20YRS. Facebook.com/Wrestling20YRS. Wrestling20YRS.com. Website, blogs, all that dig. And what else was there? iTunes, all that stuff. RSS. You can find it all on the website. It's all there. Anyway, I've been Bob Bamber. This has been Volume 1 of the Wrestling 20 Years Ago podcast of March of 1995. Until next time, goodbye.